Sweetwater, a small southern town where gossip traveled faster than the summer cicadas, was the kind of place where everyone knew your business. Its charm lay in its dusty streets, lined with mom-and-pop stores, the scent of freshly baked pies wafting from Marcy's diner, and the sense of belonging that made it both a sanctuary and a prison for its residents. It was in Sweetwater's only children's park that Jackson Harper first met Cassie Malone. Jackson, a ruggedly handsome man in his mid-30s, with a salt-and-pepper beard and kind, tired blue eyes, had recently moved back to town after his divorce. His two kids, 8-year-old Lila and 5-year-old Tommy, were his world, though the cracks left by the failed marriage were still raw. Jackson had the air of a man who carried the weight of his past on his broad shoulders. Dressed in a worn plaid shirt and jeans that spoke of both practicality and reluctance to let go of simpler times. Cassie, by contrast, was a vision of quiet resilience. A single mother to 7-year-old Maggie, she had the striking features of someone who had once been carefree. A bright smile, hazel eyes, and sun-kissed hair tied in a messy ponytail. Life, however, had taught her to guard her heart. She wore a sundress patched at the hem, more for function than fashion, and her calloused hands spoke of someone who worked hard to keep a roof over her daughter's head. Jackson and Cassie's paths crossed at the swing set, where Maggie's infectious laughter mixed with Lila and Tommy's playful squeals. Jackson was helping Tommy climb the slide when Maggie ran up to Cassie, tugging her hand and pointing toward the swings. "Mama, can you push me?" Maggie chirped, her big brown eyes shining. Cassie smiled but hesitated when she noticed Jackson watching. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the park seemed to fade. It wasn't love at first sight, but there was a flicker of something, a recognition of shared struggles. The kids, oblivious to the adults' awkward glances, quickly bonded over a shared mission to conquer the monkey bars. Jackson and Cassie found themselves standing side by side near the swings, unsure how to bridge the silence. "They're fast friends, huh?" Jackson said, his southern drawl warm and easy. Cassie nodded, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Kids are good at that. They don't overthink things like we do," Jackson chuckled. "Maybe we could learn something from them." Cassie smiled faintly but didn't reply. She had grown used to keeping people at arm's length, and small-town chatter often came with strings attached. Jackson, however, seemed different, genuine, almost painfully so. As the children played, Jackson and Cassie shared pieces of their lives, each revelation hesitant but sincere. Jackson spoke of his divorce, how his ex-wife had taken a lucrative job in the city and left him with the kids. Cassie shared that she worked 2 jobs to make ends meet and hadn't dated in years, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't risk letting the wrong person into Maggie's life. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, their conversation had shifted to lighter topics: favorite childhood memories, the quirks of Sweetwater's residents, and Maggie's love for the town's annual pie-eating contest. As they parted ways, Cassie found herself smiling, a flicker of warmth breaking through her usual guardedness. The following morning, Marcy's diner buzzed with its usual breakfast crowd, but the topic of conversation centered around Jackson and Cassie. Sweetwater's unofficial town crier, Helen Bowers, sat at the counter, stirring her coffee and spreading half-truths like butter on toast. "I saw them at the park," she whispered to her friend Betty Jo. "Looked mighty cozy, if you ask me." Betty Jo gasped. "Cassie and Jackson? Poor Cassie's been through enough. She doesn't need another heartbreak." Sheriff Ray Carter, a middle-aged man with a penchant for meddling under the guise of concern, overheard. Ray had a soft spot for Cassie, having watched her struggle to raise Maggie alone. He decided to keep an eye on the budding connection, worried Jackson's past might bring trouble to her already complicated life. Over the next few weeks, Jackson and Cassie continued to meet at the park, their conversations growing deeper as the children's friendship flourished. Jackson found himself drawn to Cassie's quiet strength, while Cassie admired Jackson's devotion to his kids and his sincerity. One evening, Jackson invited Cassie and Maggie to join him and his kids for a barbecue at his small rental home on the outskirts of town. As the kids played tag in the backyard, Jackson and Cassie sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea under the glow of string lights. "I'm not good at this," Cassie admitted, breaking the silence. Letting people in. Me neither, Jackson said. But maybe we don't have to be perfect at it. We just have to try. Cassie looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his face for any hint of insincerity. Finding none, she nodded. Maybe. Just as Jackson and Cassie began to lower their walls, trouble came knocking. Jackson's ex-wife Marla came to town unexpectedly, claiming she wanted to reconnect with the kids. Jackson, clearly frustrated by her arrival, asked Marla, "Why are you here? What happened to your job? That why you left your family? That job was more important than us." Marla's smile was smooth like butter. "Darling," she said, "I realized that being a mother was more important to me. I really missed my children." Her arrival sent ripples of unease through Jackson's budding relationship with Cassie, who worried Marla's presence might unravel the fragile trust they had built. Meanwhile, Sheriff Ray confronted Jackson, warning him not to hurt Cassie. "She's been through hell, Harper. Don't add to it." Jackson, frustrated by the interference, promised he had no intention of hurting her. Cassie, grappling with her own insecurities, questioned whether she could trust Jackson. But when she saw how fiercely he protected his children during a heated argument with Marla, her doubts began to fade. The resolution came on a rainy afternoon. Jackson, drenched from head to toe, stood on Cassie's porch, a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. "Look, Cassie, I'm not perfect, got a lot of baggage, but what I feel for you is real, and my ex-wife being here doesn't change anything," he said, his voice steady despite his soaked appearance. "I'm here and I want to make this relationship work, if you are willing to give me a chance to prove myself." Cassie, moved by his vulnerability, stepped aside to let him in. "Am willing," she said, a smile breaking through her tears. Their journey was far from over, but as they stood in the warmth of Cassie's home, the rain outside softening to a drizzle, they both felt something they hadn't in years: hope. Sunday mornings in Sweetwater were as predictable as the sunrise, and the sight of Jackson, Cassie, and their kids walking into the whitewashed Sweetwater Baptist Church together sent the congregation into a frenzy. Whispers followed them down the aisle as they found a pew, the children giggling and oblivious to the attention. "Well, I'll be," muttered Helen Bowers, leaning toward Betty Jo. "Look at them, practically a family already." Even Pastor Bill, a seasoned man of the cloth with years of experience managing Sweetwater's social dramas, raised an eyebrow as he greeted the group after the service. "Good to see you all here together," Pastor Bill said, his tone neutral but his eyes twinkling with curiosity. Jackson grinned. Figured it was time to give folks something real to talk about. Cassie blushed, but the warmth in Jackson's voice reassured her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she liked the idea of facing it with him. Family night dinners quickly became a weekly tradition. Jackson hosted at his cozy rental home, his parents, Paul and Evelyn Harper, bringing their famous peach cobbler, while Cassie's parents, Tom and Darlene Malone, contributed their signature fried chicken. The kids ran around the backyard, their laughter echoing through the trees, while the adults shared stories and awkwardly navigated this new dynamic. Jackson's honesty, however, occasionally turned the dinners tense. One evening, after the dishes were cleared and the kids had gone off to play, Jackson leaned back in his chair, his blue eyes serious. "I need you to know something," he said, looking directly at Cassie. "Marla is pure trouble. She'll act friendly, but it's an act. Don't trust her." Cassie hesitated, sensing the bitterness in his tone. "She told me she doesn't want to get back together with you. She just wants to co-parent." Jackson snorted. "Co-parent? Marla's idea of co-parenting is dropping in when it suits her and stirring up drama. She doesn't want me back, but she hates seeing me happy." The room grew quiet, and Paul Harper broke the tension with a soft chuckle. "Son, you've always had a knack for attracting complicated women." True to Jackson's warning, Marla began her campaign to drive a wedge between him and Cassie. She invited Cassie for coffee, pretending to extend an olive branch. "I just wanted to clear the air," Marla said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table. "I don't want Jackson. That ship sailed long ago. I just think you should be careful. He's got a temper, you know, and he's not exactly great at keeping promises." Marla recalled some of the heated encounters that her and Jackson had in the past during their marriage. and the many broken promises he made to her over the years. Cassie listened politely, but her instincts told her Marla wasn't being genuine. Still, the seeds of doubt were planted, and Marla's subtle manipulation made Cassie question her growing feelings for Jackson. Meanwhile, Jackson sought guidance from Pastor Bill, confessing his frustration. "I can't keep letting Marla get in the way of my life. How do I deal with someone so manipulative?" Pastor Bill, ever wise, leaned forward. "Pray for strength and patience, Jackson. You can't control Marla, but you can control how you respond. Show Cassie through your actions that you're trustworthy. That's all you can do." As if Marla wasn't enough trouble, Sheriff Ray Carter added another layer of tension. Ray's protective nature toward Cassie had always been obvious, but when Helen Bowers let it slip to Jackson that Ray might be in love with her, it set Jackson on edge. Sheriff Ray's always had a soft spot for Cassie. Helen whispered conspiratorially at Marcy's diner. "Poor man's just too chicken to admit it." Jackson didn't confront Ray directly, but the sheriff's lingering glances and overly familiar behavior toward Cassie didn't go unnoticed. When Ray accused Jackson of still being in love with Marla during a chance encounter at the general store, Jackson finally snapped. "I'm in love with Cassie," Jackson said, his voice steady but firm. "And if you can't handle that, it's your problem, not mine." Cassie, overhearing the confrontation, decided it was time to address Ray herself. She invited him to the park, where they often brought the kids to play. "Ray," Cassie said gently, "I'm grateful for your friendship. You've been there for Maggie and me when we needed it most. But I can't give you what you're looking for. I'm in love with Jackson." Ray's face fell. He nodded, saying, "I never confessed my feeling to you because I always knew you didn't see me in that way. I just want you to be happy, Cassie. That's all I've ever wanted. I'm not going to stand in way, but remember, I'm here anytime you need me." Sweetwater's gossip mill reached a fever pitch when news broke that Marla had been having an affair with Dan Fletcher, a prominent local businessman and a married one at that. The scandal rocked the town after a heated exchange between Dan's wife and Marla at his office. Marla, unable to face the humiliation, packed her bags and left Sweetwater for good. Jackson, relieved, sat with Cassie on his porch that evening, watching the kids chase fireflies in the yard. "She's gone," Jackson said, exhaling deeply. "For good this time." Cassie placed a hand on his arm. "You don't have to worry about her anymore. We can focus on us." With Marla out of the picture, Jackson and Cassie began to focus on strengthening their relationship. They spent a year attending couples counseling, working through their fears and insecurities. The process wasn't easy, but it brought them closer, teaching them how to communicate and trust each other fully. When Jackson finally proposed, it wasn't a grand gesture, but a quiet, heartfelt moment on the same porch where they'd shared so many conversations. "Cassie," he said, holding her hand, "I don't want to just build a life with you. I want to build a family, a home. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Cassie's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Jackson." Their wedding was a small but joyful affair, held under the magnolia trees at Sweetwater's town square. The entire town turned out, not to gossip, but to celebrate. Jackson and Cassie stood hand in hand, their children by their sides, as they vowed to build a future together, a future filled with love, laughter, and second chances. As they danced under the stars that night, Jackson whispered in Cassie's ear, "We gave them something to talk about, didn't we?" Cassie laughed, her heart full, "And I wouldn't have it any other way." The end. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tales. Please like and subscribe to our channel.